Evening, everyone. Welcome to everyone on behalf of Rohini, Nilika, and Philanthropy. May I request the speakers to mute themselves? We have an echo. Thank you. Films have always evoked strong emotions and passions in citizenry to take action on several societal issues. The purpose of this session is to understand the thought process behind making the film, the impact they have, and the possibility of molding a broader conversation to them. A few housekeeping rules for the audience. We have a space to put in your questions, and there's a chat space for conversation. You can ask questions throughout the session, and you can also upvote certain questions. And we'll take questions in the last 10 minutes of the session. Quickly introducing Hansel Mehta, who needs no introduction, is an Indian film director, writer, actor, producer who works in Hindi cinema. He started his career in television with the show Khana Khazana and later moved on to films like Jayate, Dil Pe Mat Le Aaj, and Chal. He's best known for Shahid, for which he won the National Film Award for Best Director. He then went on to direct City Lights, Aligarh, Simran, Scam 1992, and many more. We welcome you, Mr. Mehta. Our next speaker here is Anushka Shah. Anushka founded Civic Entertainment Project at MIT Media Lab and now runs a production house, Civic Studios, in Mumbai. Civic Studios creates entertainment in the form of films, web series, and short form digital content to inspire citizen citizenship and help build better democracy. We welcome both of you, and over to you, Anushka.
Thank you so much, Renee. And hi, Hansel. So this is Hansel and my third panel together, I think, on this topic. So either we're very good at this or the industry needs more souls interested in media and democracy. But thanks, Hansel, for joining the chat. And as always, looking forward to talking to you. The topic for today is light citizenship action, which begs the question of what does what we watch on Netflix tonight have to do with democracy? I think when we talk about talk about media as the fourth pillar of democracy, I think put more of that onus on the news media, and we let entertainment go a little bit scot free. And yet, entertainment today is a form of media we are statistically spending more time on than any other form. Entertainment can amuse, but I think with those same emotions, characters, drama, it also has the power to influence. And I think particularly when it comes to active citizenship, it can of course bring awareness to an issue. I think that much, is well established. But it can also reflect experiences of minority groups. It can tell you the story of a social movement on a big screen. It can illustrate types of civic action through, characters that you look up to and much more. I think the Nudge team has a poll that's linked to this. It's a short one. I think the question says, where do we see films having the most impact in the context of active citizenship? So I'll just let them post that poll. The options are creating awareness, shifting the narrative, or driving action. I'm going to give it this a few seconds till everyone's reacted to it. For folks interested in this topic, Hansan and I have done a series with Film Companion separately on films and social impact. It's really interesting, and it explores the different ways that films can have an impact. So you can also check that out on Film Companion's YouTube link. Cool. While I think we're just finishing this, right after this, we'll begin with playing a short clip from Rang De Basanti. And I think the reason we're going to start with that to set the tone a little bit is because whenever we have a conversation about films and democracy, that comes up as the one iconic example. It inspired you as a film to be a part of the system. but it also had a real world impact outside of the film in encouraging people to reopen it ended up encouraging the reopening of the Jessica Lal murder case. So could I just request the Nudge team to play that clip, and then we'll dive right into our conversation after that. Thank you.
I always believed there were two kinds of men in this world. Men who go to their deaths screaming, and men who go to their deaths in silence. And then I met the third kind.
ये अंत कहाँ है मिस्टर मैकिनली? ये तो शुरुआत है।
It's time.
This is my grandfather's diary. He was an eyewitness.
How can this be real? Tell me! How can this be the will of God?
मुल्क अपना, जमीन अपनी, पर हमें भगा रहे हैं विदेशी.
Boys no older than 23 fighting the empire, okay?
हमारे पास और भी आएंगे, और भी।
Yeah, तुम लोग मेरी फिल्म में acting करोगे. You guys are perfect.
कोई फ्यूचर नहीं है इस देश का।
कोई भी देश परफेक्ट नहीं होता, उसे बेहतर बनाना पड़ता है।
ओए पैण दे टके वो पास दी गल कर रही है और तू फ्यूचर दे पीछे पड़ा है। टिक पैर पास में, टिक पैर फ्यूचर में, तभी तो हम आज पे मूत रहे हैं।
स्कॉट को हम नहीं छोड़ सकते।
मार डालो उसे।
ओए!
तो क्या करें? हाथ पर हाथ धरे बैठे रहें?
ये क्या हो रहा है?
कुछ नहीं बदलेगा।
मार डालो उसे।
कौन करेगा खत्म? हाँ कौन? अरे खत्म कौन करेगा?
मैं।
जिंदगी जीने के दो ही तरीके होते हैं, एक जो हो रहा है होने दो, बर्दाश्त करते जाओ, या फिर जिम्मेदारी उठाओ उसे बदलने की।
Thank you for that. Hansel, so I think the first question when I see this trailer is, for me, is that, what do you think has changed in India since 2006 when Rang De Basanti released? Do you think that the movie would still have the same impact on young people and citizens today?
Well, I've tested this hypothesis just a few weeks ago. So my daughter, we were watching Tufan, and I was watching Tufan with my daughters, and while she liked the film, she had a lot of questions. So I said, this is the filmmaker who made Rang De Basanti. So my daughter was, I think, born in the year of Rang De Basanti. So I showed her right after Tufan, I showed her Rang De Basanti. and I was waiting to see what kind of impact it had on her. And she was moved by the film. She was very, very moved. She was quite stirred up. I mean, she spoke. We talked about the film till until very late. We spoke about it the next day.
Oh, it loses network. I think we've just lost Hansa's network. Maybe we'll give it a minute. In the meanwhile, in case anybody in the audience has questions that you'd like to leave in the chat, please feel free to. We'll make sure we'll take them up at the end. Maybe just a quick note to the Nudge team in case we don't get Hansel's connection back. Oh, there, I think we got it.
No,
Can we
really
have you
sorry.
back? No
Yes.
problem.
So yeah, I mean, I wish somebody made a Rang De Basanti on our mobile networks. Uh, yeah, I mean, the impact of the film was very strong. It really stirred up a conversation. And it also left me wondering whether we could even get to make a film like this today, you know, and whether Rakesh Mehra, who made that film, I mean, there was an anger that the film reflected, whether he would make such a film today.
Yeah.
You know, it makes you wonder whether people and their political stance has also changed over the years, and whether they actually feel empowered enough to make a film like Rang De Basanti to
Yeah.
reflect the times. So, I saw it with a sense of, I loved the film, but I saw it also with a sense of, uh, despair. Because I'm not sure if we can make a Rang De Basanti today. Uh, at least not reflecting the times that we're living in. We can make a Rang De Basanti and, bash the Congress government. But I don't think we can be open enough. I mean, it's a comment. Uh, it's a state of democracy that we are encouraged.
Yeah, I think it's a very ironic moment. I remember talking to Rakesh from Prakash Mehra about this, and I asked him kind of what had motivated him to make the film, and he said it was the zeitgeist of that time and that moment, which I think any film that touches an audience often does. What kind of media narratives do you think we need today to encourage more democracy? And this is taking off from your point that somewhere when you're sliding from a liberal to a semi-liberal democracy, how can media narratives help push that trend back?
Well, I think it ultimately emerges from the storyteller, and the person who sort of shapes the narrative is the storyteller. And I just feel storytellers need to sort of rejuvenate and reinvigorate that spirit of fearless storytelling. I think that is crucial in today's times. At any time, you know, uh, we need more and more fearless storytellers, and we need to find a way to tell our stories, no matter how critical they are of the current establishment, or how unpopular your opinion uh, in the film is with the powers that be. I think we have to find a way to tell those stories because they're crucial. We are living in a time where conversations are one-sided. We are sort of forced to have those one-sided conversations. Uh, we are often forced to tell tales that fit in the garb of nationalism and patriotism. I mean, they are forced to belong to a very specific narrative. A narrative that is convenient to a particular set of people, to to the present dispensation. So I think we need to. I mean, we need to be able to have a counter narrative, and we need to do it elegantly. We need to do it responsibly. I'm not saying that we should be uh, loud or crass about it.
Yeah. I'm going to push a little bit more on this in that I think, and I fully agree, as I think many in the audience would, that there is a need to do that. How do you practically, as a filmmaker and as a content creator, go about that when there is such a fear of a backlash, right? And an industry that is already, I think, extremely intense in its the work, the timings, the margins. It is a difficult business. So how do you balance that risk that you need to take versus the backlash that you could get from that?
Yeah, I think again the secret that lies in watching Rang De Basanti, that you tell your story within uh, in an accessible manner. You tell that story in an entertaining manner, create compelling characters. I mean, just follow the basics of good storytelling. Create compelling characters, tell unique stories, and make them uh, make the film well, make your show well. I think that is most important. That if there's a compelling story, there are compelling characters, you will find people willing to be a part of it. There will be many people who might not want to be a part of it because it might reflect a slightly bolder viewpoint than the one considered popular. But you will find enough people to become a part of your vision. And I mean, you should be also ready to sacrifice. I'm giving you my own example. After the success of my show Scam 1992, I was flooded with with all kinds of films and offers. I've taken up some of them, but before I embarked on doing those films, I'm making a small film called Faraz. Uh,
Yeah.
Faraz is, in that sense, a very independent narrative. It is trying to stir up a conversation, uh, and it is looking at an event, and through that event, it is trying to discuss and look and stir up a conversation about the youth, about where our youth is heading, what they are thinking. Uh, you know, the youth that belongs to a religious minority, uh, the Muslim young, the youth, what they're thinking. So I've I've used that success to be able to tell the story, and I think we have to use our success a bit responsibly. I mean, yes, make money, but also make. So in terms of strategy, I think I will make a film like this at least once or twice a year.
Hmm.
It will you sacrifice some money, but you tell the stories that count.
Yeah, I think that's a very specific, helpful, I think, insider strategy to think of how do you cross subsidize your own work so as to do that. Um, I guess I think particularly when you're living in a semi-liberal time, you have to kind of adopt methods like that to be able to still keep the perseverance of that fight on and as smartly as one can.
Yeah,
Are there
yeah. I mean,
examples?
look at Anubhav Sinha's. Yeah, look at Anubhav Sinha's work. Whether it is Mulk or it is Article 15 or Thappad. I mean, there's an attempt to build a conversation within the mainstream. So the films have done well commercially. So there is a
Yeah.
storytelling that has obviously appealed to a larger audience. I have often have disagreements with him about how verbose or how much they spell out their themes. But I also at the same time accept that that spelling out has led to a larger, a more mass conversation. It has led to
Right.
more access for his work. Yeah, I mean, there is a lesson somewhere in that, and that we can exist within our current system, which we see as very stifling, within that system, and make films that stir up conversations.
It's interesting you say that because I think Anubhav Sinha in one of the interviews had said that he has a close filmmaker friend who was critical of that last scene of Thappad in the puja when it was spelled out. Now I know who that is. But I think that's an interesting point in balancing kind of the art of filmmaking versus when you are making films with the aim of impact as well. I think that's a line that you then choose to cross when you have almost that double objective. Um, are there films that you think that have concretely moved the needle in India when it comes to democracy?
Uh, well, I don't know. I mean, it's the last 7 years have been very difficult. So you can actually count those films on
Yeah.
your fingertips. And I don't think. See, I am of the firm opinion that films. You can push the limits of the democracy that you enjoy at that moment. I mean, democracy for me is very relative. It is the amount of freedom you have within the given, uh, uh, you know, at that moment within the given circumstances imposed upon the system by the system. So I think there have been. Uh, I mean, I can give you an example of my film Aligarh. We made that film in 2015, released it in 2016, and while it was not a runaway commercial success or a mainstream film, what it did is it successfully became a centerpiece of the conversation around LGBTQ rights, the right to privacy. I mean, you start talking about the right to privacy, then I mean, that was the time when 377 was in force again, and so somewhere that conversation about 377 and its complete irrelevance in our modern society was, it sparked a debate. We were at the center of that debate for a long, long time. It stirred up emotions. So, I mean, there have been, whether, I mean, Neeraj Gewan's work in Masan, in a very silent and very beautiful way, opened up conversations about class. I feel, Mulk was an important film in the past few years. Again, which is talking about the identity um, politics and you know, uh, yeah. I mean, otherwise it's very difficult to name such films. I mean, Hazaro Khwaishein Aisi by Sudhir Mishra. That was a film that I thought really very elegantly. It's an example of how good storytelling and political, viewpoints are both. Uh, can be such potent cinematic tool. It's perhaps the best political drama made in our country. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Shahid, for me, Shahid, my film Shahid, I think was an important document on the Muslim middle class.
Hmm.
It sort of it did shine a light on their lives, on their world, also on this and the condition and the helplessness of uh, minorities and economically underserved under trials. Their their
Yeah.
their lack of access to defense, and how hopeless a judicial system is for people who don't have uh, the access to good quality defense.
Yeah. No, and I think all the films that you've named are, I think iconic in so many
I mean,
ways.
in the south, I mean, I remember, I mean, Visarnai by Vetri Maran, I think was an important
Yeah.
film. So some of Vetri's work and some of the films that you see in the Malayalam space, recent films that you're seeing in Malayalam, are, I mean, I thought The Great Indian Kitchen in many ways, it's a very
Yeah.
uh, powerful film on, sort of demolishing prevalent patriarchal, behavioral, patriarchal behavior within the family, uh, unit. So I thought that was a very, very, very powerful film. It had an impact on me, and I mean, I've been actively trying to get the film made in different languages.
The Great Indian Kitchen.
So yes, I think
That
it
was
should be
super.
seen.
Absolutely.
It should be seen in many languages. It needs to reach people around the country, and for that, it needs to be made in a language other than Hindi. I think it
Right.
needs to be made in many local languages.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think as an audience member, I have been so impacted by these films. But now that we've kind of, as a company, when we've entered production, the one thing we've also realized is that there are so many young filmmakers who will say, okay, Hansal Mehta did this and Anubhav Sinha did that. We are inspired by the fact that there was success with these films and they managed to talk about important topics. So I think there is also a ripple effect within the industry when one person manages to do a film like that, that more of those crop up. And I want to use your mention of Shahid and Aligarh as a segue. So I think we were keen on playing the trailers for that so that the audience also gets a chance to connect with them. And then we'll continue the conversation with that.
Sure.
मुझे नाइंसाफी दिखाकर खुदा ने इंसाफ सिखाया। दर्द, बेइज्जती, जुर्म का सामना करके मुझे लड़ना सिखाया। उन लोगों की मदद करना सिखाया जो खुद की मदद करने के काबिल नहीं है। इसको याद रखना जिंदगी भर।
हमें तो मालूम नहीं कि टेररिस्ट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इंटरनेट के बेसिस पर इतने बड़े बड़े हादसे करते हैं या नहीं, लेकिन लगता है शाहिद साहब को इसकी बड़ी अच्छी जानकारी है।
No, what are you trying to say?
आपने काफी समय बिताया है टेररिस्ट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के साथ, है ना?
Are you accusing me?
तीन है ये, तीन टोटल। बता इसमें से किसको पहचानता तू, बता। हाँ, इसको पहचानता है? मोटी चंडी साबित।
I'm not sure if we're also playing the trailer for Aligarh.
मेरे खिलाफ साजिश थी।
आप गे हैं इसीलिए?
कोई मेरी फीलिंग को 3 अक्षरों में कैसे समझ सकता है? ये एक कविता की तरह से भावात्मक, an uncontrollable urge. Am I drunk?
Not yet.
Then I'll have one more. देखो, मैं यहाँ बाहर का आदमी समझा जाता हूँ, एन आउटसाइडर। उर्दू बोलने वाले शहर में मराठी सिखाता हूँ, शादीशुदा लोगों के बीच अकेला रहता हूँ।
हैव अ ब्रेकिंग स्टोरी. अलीगढ़ यूनिवर्सिटी में कुछ टीवी जर्नलिस्ट एक प्रोफेसर का घर में जबरदस्ती घुस गया एंड दे फिल्म्ड हिम हैविंग सेक्स विद द रिक्शा पुलर. प्रोफेसर सिराज के बारे में 2 मिनट्स बात करना था, एक स्टोरी कर रहा हूं.
आई डोंट वांट टू टॉक टू द मीडिया. होमोसेक्सुअलिटी को प्रैक्टिस करना, वो भी यूनिवर्सिटी प्रीमाइसेस के अंदर, हराम माना जाता है.
आपको कमरा खाली करना है, बैचलर आदमी नहीं चाहिए.
तो बैचलर आदमी क्या टेररिस्ट होता है?
अरे होता होगा.
तुम लोग ये शब्द के पीछे क्यों पड़े जाते हो? कभी लव को भी समझने की कोशिश किया करो. इट्स अ ब्यूटीफुल वर्ल्ड.
क्या प्रोफेसर सिरस अपना बिजनेस बाहर खेल के मैदान में कंडक्ट कर रहे थे? What business do neighbors have looking into someone's bedroom?
You have to fight it out, Mr. Siras.
क्या करना होगा मुझे? कौन है?
You mentioned earlier, Hansel, that we need to kind of encourage more filmmakers to tell these kinds of stories, and it's hard to separate the art from the artist or the personal from the political. What is it that motivated you to want to tell these 2 stories specifically with Shahid and Aligarh?
I think the human stories. For me, always the personal comes before the public. So, I mean, while they are powerful, when I found my voice as a filmmaker, I realized that the stories I wanted to tell was of those who were at the margins of society, but personal stories. I wanted to find the stories from within our surroundings. They need not be jingoistic heroes. They need not be larger than life people. So, in the quest to find those stories, I think we found through them issues that affect you on a personal level. Like Professor Siras was not an activist. He was not.
Oh, I think we might have lost Hansel again. Maybe in the meanwhile, while we get Hansel back, I don't know if the Nudge team wants to share the poll results.
Yeah, we can do that. We can also take some questions.
Sure.
In the meantime, so
the only thing is without Hansel, we won't be able to answer.
Yeah, I think they're with Hansel. So maybe we can just publish the poll.
Sure.
Sorry.
We have you back.
Terrible network.
No problem.
Yeah, so I think it was just the personal stories that had a great impact on me. I mean, they impacted me emotionally. Shahid Azmi's story really resonated with me. Also, justice, social justice, inequality. These are themes that have always bothered me, and they keep me. They make me restless. They make me lose my sleep. And to find such personal stories about things that make you angry, that make you question the world that you live in, That's the reason these films have that power. That
Yeah.
years after they were made, they still have the potential to inspire, to create, to provoke conversations. So yeah, I mean, it was. I think ultimately it was the stories. They were really, really powerful stories that uh, made me tell them.
I think when you lost your network for a second, they were showing the results of the poll. It showed that I think roughly, yeah, I think 46 and 42% of people have said creating awareness and shifting the narrative in terms of how films can have an impact. And there's a much kind of smaller share, about 12%, that's talking about driving action. And I think this is it's an interesting result, and it's an important question, I think, to explore, because at Civic Studios, a lot of what we are trying to answer is, how do you create entertainment that is not just going to provoke action in terms of insurrectionism, right, or revolution, but when it comes to democracy building, you need institutionalism, you need to think about reform. It's the slow, boring, incremental things often that you have to fight for. And we are struggling to understand that while you can spark conversations and while we can create more awareness as a society, how do we, and which is the first step, but how do we translate that to the second action, a second step of the actual action? If you're talking about Section 377, how do you make sure more people are supporting that? Or how do you make sure there are more campaigns, protests, social media activism, all the different forms of it to legalize gay marriage, for example? So, any thoughts on where that shift from awareness to action happens?
I think it is. That's where civil society comes into play. I mean, as storytellers, you can take these, you can spark up these conversations, you can create these narratives. But I always say, after the film is made and it is out there in the public domain, it's over to civil society to actually, the institutions within civil society need to work more closely with storytellers. Mm. And we as storytellers need to involve them as producers, as studios. We somewhere need to find a way of engaging with uh, institutions that can drive action, because as a cinema, as its function is limited to that, in my opinion, to limited to that of provoking thought, or creating provoking debate. But beyond that, unless civil society does not is not made to take action by organized uh, movements, nothing is going to happen. Did Rang De Basanti make a change? Yes, the Jessica Lal case. I think that that was an example of one example of a film actually driving some sort of change.
Hmm.
But it's very rare. It's very, very rare. I also feel that we need to be able to entertainment. We have to look at entertainment and storytelling. We need to look beyond the conventional forms of entertainment. I recently got engaged with a uh, TikTok kind of medium. Short, really short form.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think what is important is that beyond films, OTT, series, we need to work a lot. I mean, there's a huge potential in that really mini, the micro format. The 1 minute, 2 minute format. There's
Yeah.
a lot we can do by telling powerful stories, compelling stories there, and be driving far more. Having far more conversations through that, because I see that a lot of young conversations are driven uh,
Yeah.
from those mediums. I think it's a great way to engage with the youth and to sort of provoke them to act.
I think you've answered a question that somebody had in the audience about the role of kind of short form media like TikTok, Reels, and memes I'm gonna grab time for one last question, mine, and then open up the questions we have from the audience. I think, especially when you highlight the role of civil society, and since we are kind of, in a forum and a session where it does have a lot to do with the social sector and philanthropy, and I often hear a lot of people in this space talking about how do we kind of, use or support media to create social change, right? So, do you have any thoughts on what role funders and philanthropists can play in supporting this and bridging that gap between change makers and media creators?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple. I've always felt that India needs its own participant media.
Yeah.
We need a studio that makes films with a strong voice that
Yeah.
backs them. So it need not be philanthropy. It is it, but films as a social business should
Yeah.
be encouraged and invested in. I feel that our studios are too we are run our storytelling is run by studios that are only that are full of greed. I mean, greed drives everything, and it's not bad to be greedy because ultimately you're there for the profits. But I think we can and that kind of organization, it doesn't. The answer is not in getting a participant media to India. The answer is in creating our own model for
Yeah.
telling those stories, for being slightly fearless. Those fearless stories, and it needs some amount of fearless investing, I think, and that is what and a lot more. Again, to answer the previous question, also that a lot more investment in these new forms in new media. We need to be really engaging with society through new media.
Yeah.
Our this whole non-profits, there's too much of this newslettering and very old-fashioned means of communication. I think it is important that the social sector engages with uh, the wider audience in a more meaningful and a more relevant manner.
Yeah. Absolutely. Shameless plug for Civic Studios, but our internal pitch deck says we are trying to be the Indian participant media.
Okay,
Um,
so
yeah. But great. Thank you so much for answering that and for patiently answering my questions. I'll open up to the questions that we have from the audience. I think Sudeep has a question. While films can be good triggers for general audience, understanding of pertinent issues requires more deep reading and research. How can we make sure we don't lose sight of where the audience forms opinions without knowing much, the narrative versus the knowledge?
yeah, I mean, see again. This is it's a cart and horse situation. Uh, I what like again the example I can give is from my own work. Scam 1992 when it came out, very few people knew. A lot of people. I mean, the amount of people who watched it. I'm sure more than 60 to 70% knew nothing about or more knew nothing about the money market. Will a smaller percentage knew something about shares and investing and speculation in the capital markets. A lot of people after watching the show, I mean, it's not that the film, that the show really cleared concepts, but people actually went and did their own reading,
Right.
tried to understand the markets. And I think, again, that's, films are a beginning, a starting point for that quest for knowledge. That if the film really stirs you emotionally, if it does something within you, it should possibly stir up that need for greater knowledge. So I think a narrative and knowledge don't work are not counterproductive. I think they are I think that they are allies in creating social change. That first comes the narrative, then comes the quest for knowledge, and then hopefully some level of some drive towards change.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's fair. I was definitely one of those people with scam who did not know much about the money market, but it builds so much intrigue that the next time when you're reading an article, come across something in the news, you're so much likelier to pay attention to it and learn more. So absolutely. Um, Interesting point that Hansel Mehta makes about the current context and if RDB can be made. Do you see any of the newer forms of entertainment bridging the gap, like TikTok, Reels, memes, etc.? I think you've partly answered this, but
Yeah,
add.
I think I've answered that, but I feel this new media for years has been very potent, has been a very potent force, and we need to have a more structured approach to content for new media. Uh, while a lot of entertaining stuff is made and all that, I think within that entertainment we can tell powerful stories. I mean, look at some of the really sharp political commentary, some of the really angry, uh, angry humor has all emerged from, Instagram.
Yeah.
Some of the influencers belong there. Some of the most uncomfortable questions have been raised on social media. So I think we need to give these forms of entertainment far more importance than they're given currently. Yes, and we the fact that they make a difference. The guidelines that were released recently tells you how powerful they are. For a
Yeah.
government to release guidelines that restrict, that potentially restrict the kind of content that one can actually get to see there. That the attempt to restrict those mediums is by itself tells you the state of democracy today.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think sometimes because there is frivolous, silly content also on it, I think it's underestimated. But my professor at MIT had this paper that he wrote called the cute cat theory, and it was exactly the fact that because you go to social media for cute cats, you end up seeing, you can end up kind of complementing that with more serious things as well. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the representation of persons with disability in Indian cinema and Bollywood specifically? Do you think cinema is powerful enough to bring in topics like disability into the mainstream? This is by Kanithi.
I wish we did more about that. Disability. Unfortunately, most of the time, it's disability, minorities, minorities, marginalized people. Unfortunately, they have been stereotyped
Yeah.
and often caricatured. You know, in the past, we there is an attempt to now stop carrying that to have lesser caricaturization of some sections of society. But disability, we don't pay much attention to. And I remember a studio, and I went with a story, a very personal story about Down syndrome to a studio head. And his response was, yeah, which hero will play a person like this? And, who will watch this? You can't watch 2 hours of somebody who's looking ugly. So, I mean, this is the way it is looked at. Uh, they believe that it will not resonate with the popular. So, until that happens, I mean, we've had very few examples of disability being represented with, like there was Margarita with a straw.
Yeah.
But again, it's very non mainstream. Otherwise you have films like, I mean, no disrespect, but a film like Black, which really, it's a ham fest.
Yeah.
You make disability into some sort of a choreographed
Yeah.
Bollywood song. So I mean, it was very disappointing. I saw the film and I was very disappointed with what
Yeah.
I saw. I mean, there was a chance to, I mean, disability, Alzheimer's, everything. They everything was made into this, you know, there was no, it actually felt like it was mocking disability
Yeah.
more than. So yes, there is a desperate need to do that. And again, that is where, we need a participant media model here.
Yeah. I think a show like Atypical, I don't know if it's on Netflix or where, but I think they're good examples of, I think, how these issues get treated more sensibly. Let's wait for the next question. Maybe I'll pick one out till that happens.
Yeah.
There's a question on how does data play a role to stir social change through entertainment. One of the factors that brought us to the current social context has been because of the misuse of data. Oh, okay, great. This is also by Nikhil.
Yeah, I think Anushka is better, equipped to answer this.
I'll take a stab at it. I think at one level, as at Civic Studios, especially a lot of how we use data is that, and this connects to a previous question that someone had asked, is that we try and understand that when we're taking up an issue, what is the current opinion that our target audience might have on that issue? Where on the continuum of awareness to action is the audience? And then we work backwards from that to try and find stories that will meet the audience where they are and try and push the narrative a step further. So I think for us, that's one way. I think the second is in measuring impact. And this is the conversation Hansel and I've had before as well on the kind of need to measure impact of entertainment. And you can often write a story or a character with the aim of having impact A, but it can completely end up having impact B. One of my favorite examples is Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps, the original movie. And the aim there, the writer and the director wrote that film because he wanted to show how bad Wall Street had gotten its greed. But he ended up romanticizing the Gordon Gekko character so much that it did the complete opposite, and greed is good became a mantra on Wall Street. So I think those are two ways to move beyond entertainment for entertainment, and if you're trying to create social change, to do that in a responsible way. So yeah, I think that's one response to that. And Hansel, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I agree. I mean, I believe you're better equipped to answer that. And yes, I do believe that impact, there has to be a mechanism of measuring impact. If we have to talk about films as a medium of social change, then we must have a mechanism to measure impact. It will allow us to raise more money. It will allow more, different sources of funding to come in to make films then.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think in the social sector, that is like the many ways the $1 billion question, no pun intended, on how do you effectively measure that impact. So it's, as a filmmaker, are there any markers that you would think that, okay, if XY, if it ranked well on XYZ, my film would be a success from an impact point of view?
Unfortunately, I mean, it's all so it's so completely muddled up that it's very difficult to really say that, is an IMDb rating a measure of impact? No, I mean, none of it is very structured. So it's very difficult to say that, something. I think we need a very proper mechanism to do that. And are we interested? The first question is, are we interested in doing that?
Yeah.
One article, like I was just reading one of the questions here, where somebody said has posted an article from Economic Times about Tare Zameen Par having an impact. But these are one-offs. It is it's anecdotal. So all this information is purely anecdotal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. In the spirit of time, I'm sorry to butt in, but this has been an extremely insightful conversation, discussion, and we got a series of questions. So extremely interactive. Thank you, Mr. Mehta. Thank you, Anushka, for the lovely session.
Thank you so much for organizing.
Thank you, Rini.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Anushka.
Bye.
Bye.
To the audience, we have the next session starting in a couple of minutes, and the session is on the role of grassroots media. There's going to be Dhanya Barka and Meera Devi from Khabar Leharia. So please jump back in. We will go backstage and come back in a couple of minutes. Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye.